The night Zara Adeyemi told Tunde Adebayo he wasn't her level, he was standing in the rain with a nylon bag of suya growing cold in his hand and a future slipping quietly through his fingers. If you're new to this channel, just subscribe now, and say it in the comment section. Lekki was glowing the way it always did after a storm, streetlights reflecting off wet asphalt, expensive cars slicing through puddles, generators humming behind tall gates. Tunde stood outside Zara's apartment building, drenched, his shirt clinging to his slim frame. He had rehearsed his words all the way from Yaba in a crowded Danfo bus. In his pocket was a folded sheet of paper filled with ink that had started to bleed from the rain. He didn't notice. He was too focused on hope. When Zara finally came downstairs, she didn't step into the rain. She stayed beneath the small concrete shade by the entrance, arms folded, perfectly dry. Even in annoyance, she was stunning. Her braids were neatly tied back, her skin smooth, her eyes sharp with impatience. "You said it was urgent," she said flatly. Tunde smiled nervously and held up the nylon bag. "I know you like suya from that spot in Sabo. I bought extra pepper like you always." "Tunde," she cut in, her tone already tired. "This is not about suya." The rain intensified between them, as if nature wanted to underline what was about to happen. He stepped closer, shoes splashing. "I've been working on something big, Zara. I didn't want to tell you until it was concrete, but I've been developing a logistics platform. It connects small businesses to independent delivery riders. I met someone who might invest. If this works." "If," she echoed, her eyebrows lifting. He hesitated. "When it works." She shook her head slowly. "That's the problem. It's always when. When it works. When you blow. When things change. I'm tired of waiting for when." He blinked, confusion mixing with fear. "We've always been a team. You believed in me." "I believed in potential," she replied sharply. "But potential doesn't pay rent. It doesn't fix generators. It doesn't buy flights to Abuja. I can't keep suffering with you, Tunde. I deserve better." The words hit harder than the rain. "Suffering," he whispered. "Is that what this is to you?" She exhaled, frustrated. "Look around you. This estate alone is more than your yearly salary. My friends are moving forward. They're traveling, building brands, dating men who can provide. I'm here calculating transport fare and pretending it's romantic." He swallowed. "So that's it? Money. It's stability," she snapped. "It's growth. It's not being embarrassed when someone asks what my boyfriend does and I have to explain your startup for 10 minutes. He felt something crack inside him, but his voice stayed calm. "You used to say you admired my ambition." "I did. But ambition doesn't pay bills." A sleek black Mercedes pulled into the compound just then, headlights washing over them. Tunde instinctively stepped aside. The window rolled down slightly, revealing a flash of a gold wristwatch and a confident smirk. Zara didn't look surprised. "Tunde," she said softly now, almost pitying. "This is Kunal." The name hung heavy. Kunal gave a casual nod from the driver's seat. "Evening, bro." Tunde nodded back, refusing to shrink. "Evening." Zara adjusted her handbag. "Kunal has been helping me with some projects. He understands where I'm trying to go." Tunde stared at her. "Helping?" She met his eyes without flinching. "He's serious, Tunde. About life. About building something solid. I can't keep dragging myself backward because of feelings." "Backward?" The word tasted bitter. She stepped back under the shade, creating physical distance to match the emotional one. "You're not my level anymore." The rain suddenly felt colder. For a long moment, Tunde said nothing. He looked at her the way someone looks at a house that used to be home but now feels unfamiliar. He remembered nights they shared shawarma at midnight. study sessions at Unilag. Her voice telling him, "One day, I'll brag about you." Now her eyes held no softness. "You've already decided," he said quietly. "Yes." The simplicity of it was brutal. He nodded once, slowly. He didn't beg. He didn't shout. He didn't insult Kunal or accuse Zara. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded paper. The ink had smeared into blue shadows. "I wrote you something," he said. She didn't take it. He looked at the paper, then at her, and let it fall into the rain. The words dissolved instantly. "One day," he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest, "you'll regret underestimating me." Kunal chuckled lightly from the car, as if it were a movie line. Zara's expression didn't change. "I wish you well, Tunde." "Truly." He studied her face for any sign of hesitation. There was none. Just certainty. "Take care of yourself," she added, already turning toward the car. He watched as she slipped into the passenger seat. The door shut with a soft, final sound. The Mercedes reversed smoothly and disappeared beyond the gates. Tunde stood alone in the rain long after the taillights vanished. The suya in his hand had gone soggy. He looked down at it and laughed once, a dry, disbelieving sound. Suffering, he murmured to himself. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his landlord, reminder. 2 months outstanding. He tilted his face toward the sky, letting the rain wash over him completely. For a brief second, the weight threatened to crush him. The humiliation. The rejection. The image of her in that car. Then something shifted. He bent down, picked up the empty nylon bag, and walked toward the gate. No dramatic vow. No clenched fists. Just a quiet recalibration. On the bus ride back to Yaba, squeezed between a woman carrying vegetables and a student blasting music through leaking headphones, Tunde replayed every word Zara had said. "You're not my level. I deserve better. Ambition doesn't pay bills." He took out his phone and opened the half-finished prototype of his app. The interface was clunky. The funding was uncertain. His bank balance was almost insulting. But his mind was sharp. His skills were real. And for the first time, he felt a strange clarity. There was nothing left to protect. No one left to impress. When he reached his tiny one-room apartment, the light was out. NEPA had struck again. He didn't bother with the generator. Instead, he sat on the floor with his laptop, using the last of his battery life. He opened a new document and typed one sentence at the top. No more distractions. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Inside, Tunde worked. Not for Zara. Not for revenge. Not for validation. For himself. By dawn, his eyes were red, his stomach empty, but his code cleaner than it had ever been. He leaned back against the wall and allowed himself one final thought of her, not with longing, but with acceptance. She had chosen comfort. He would choose growth. And in that quiet room in Yaba, with nothing but determination and a dying laptop battery, Tunde Adebayo stopped being a man waiting in the rain and started becoming a man who would never wait for anyone again. Tunde disappeared without announcing it to anyone. There was no dramatic status update. No emotional quote. No drunken calls to mutual friends. By Monday morning, he had deleted Zara's number, archived old pictures, and blocked out every channel that connected him to her world. The silence wasn't for show. It was survival. Yaba became his universe. The small tech hub on Herbert Macaulay Way where he rented a cramped shared office space smelled permanently of coffee and overheated wires. The paint was peeling in places, and the air conditioner worked only when it felt merciful. But to Tunde, it was sacred ground. It was the one place where nobody cared about your shoes, your car, or your relationship status. They cared about code. Results. Execution. He slept there most nights. At first, the pain followed him like a shadow. He would pause midline of code and see Zara's face in his mind. Hear her voice saying, "You're not my level." Sometimes anger would flare in his chest. Other times, a quiet ache. But he never let it linger long. One evening, his friend Chica, a product designer who shared the workspace, dropped a bottle of malt on his desk. "Guy, you've not gone home in 3 days." Tunde didn't look up. "This is home." Chica studied him carefully. "This is about that babe, ABI." Tunde's fingers kept moving over the keyboard. "It's about scale." Chica snorted. "Scale? Last month you were writing poems." "Last month I was distracted." Chica pulled up a chair. "So what's the plan?" Tunde turned his screen slightly. A dashboard filled with metrics, rider sign-ups, and small business registrations glowed back at them. "I refined the routing algorithm. Reduced delivery time by 18%. If I can prove consistency, I'll pitch to that investor again." "The one that kept you waiting for 2 hours?" "The same one." Chica whistled. "You're stubborn." Tunde's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm focused." While Tunde was living on gala and pure water, Zara was living a different life entirely. Kunal introduced her to a world that felt like validation. Rooftop dinners in Abuja. Weekends in Dubai. Brunches where conversations revolved around investments and luxury properties. She posted smiling photos, her caption always hinting at growth and elevation. One afternoon, sitting by the pool at a hotel in Victoria Island, she scrolled through her phone and saw a familiar name pop up in a group chat. Tunde Adebayo just launched beta version of his app. Someone responded with a laughing emoji. "Another tech bro." Zara smiled faintly. "Ambition doesn't pay bills," she muttered, locking her phone. Kunal noticed her distraction. "Who's that?" "Nobody," she replied smoothly. "Just someone from the past." Kunal leaned back confidently. "The past should stay there." She nodded. Back in Yaba, Tunde was pitching again. The investor's office in Ikoyi was sleek and intimidating, glass walls and abstract art everywhere. Tunde sat upright, wearing his only well-ironed shirt. "You're young," the investor said, flipping through printed slides. "Logistics is competitive. What makes you think you can survive?" Tunde didn't hesitate. "Because I understand the informal market. Small vendors are invisible to big players. I'm building for them. And I'm building lean." The man leaned back. "And funding. I don't need millions. I need leverage." The investor studied him for a long moment. "You're different from the last time you came here." Tunde held his gaze. "I removed distractions." A slow smile formed on the man's face. "All right. I'll test you. 3-month pilot contract. Deliver measurable results, we talk bigger numbers." Tunde felt a controlled surge of victory. Deal. That single contract changed the trajectory. The pilot succeeded beyond projections. Vendors recommended the platform. Riders earned more consistently. Word spread quietly through WhatsApp groups and small business networks. 3 months turned into 6. 1 contract became 3. 3 became partnerships with regional suppliers. Tunde reinvested every naira. He upgraded servers. Hired 2 developers. Moved into a slightly bigger office, though he still slept there more often than not. Chica walked in one morning waving his phone. "Bro. TechPoint just mentioned your startup." Tunde took the phone, scanning the article quickly. His name in print felt surreal. He handed it back calmly. "We're just getting started." But late that night, alone in the office, he allowed himself one small smile. Meanwhile, cracks were forming in Zara's perfect picture. Kunal's calls became tense. She overheard him arguing about delayed payments. One planned trip was suddenly cancelled. A car was returned to the dealership for upgrades that never came back. "Everything okay?" she asked him one night as he paced their penthouse living room. "Just business fluctuations," he replied dismissively. "Big money moves, Zara. You wouldn't understand." She didn't push. Weeks later, a jewelry brand she loved declined her collaboration proposal. "Budget restructuring," they said. At brunch with her friends, the energy had shifted subtly. Conversations were sharper. Subtle comparisons lingered beneath laughter. "Have you heard of that tech founder?" one friend said casually. "Tunde Adebayo. Apparently, he just closed a serious deal." Zara's fork paused mid-air. "Oh. Yes, oh. They say investors are lining up." Another friend shrugged. "Tech is the new oil." Zara forced a laugh. "Let's see how long it lasts." But that night, curiosity overpowered pride. She typed his name into Google. The headlines weren't flashy yet, but they were real. Funding secured. Expansion plans. Strategic partnerships. Her heart beat faster than she expected. She locked her phone and stared at the ceiling. "It's just momentum," she whispered to herself. Back in Yaba, momentum was exactly what Tunde felt. 2 years after that rainy night in Lekki, he stood before a small but powerful room of venture capitalists in Lagos. "We are not just a logistics company," he said confidently. "We are infrastructure for overlooked businesses." The presentation ended with applause. 3 months later, the headlines were no longer small mentions. Nigerian tech founder Tunde Adebayo becomes one of Africa's youngest billionaires. The valuation was staggering. The partnership's international. Chika burst into Tunde's new office, this one overlooking the Lagos skyline. "You did it! Billionaire status, bro." Tunde leaned back in his chair, calm as ever. "We did it." His phone buzzed non-stop. Congratulations, interview requests, investors. He scrolled briefly, then paused when he saw a familiar name trending in his notifications. Zara Adeyemi had viewed his profile. He stared at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he locked his phone and turned back to his laptop. Outside his window, Lagos pulsed with ambition and noise. Inside, Tunde felt something unexpected. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just peace. Success did not change Tunde overnight. It refined him. His new office in Victoria Island was nothing like the cramped space in Yaba. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooked the Atlantic. The furniture was minimal, sharp, intentional. A quiet hum of efficiency replaced the chaotic buzz he once lived in. Assistants moved with purpose. Meetings were scheduled to the minute. But Tunde's routine stayed disciplined. Early mornings. Gym before sunrise. Strategy reviews before 9. No unnecessary appearances. No loud celebrations. The media, however, loved him. Nigeria's quiet tech giant. The billionaire who built in silence. Invitations flooded in, conferences, panels, charity boards. He declined most. Until one stood out. A high-profile charity gala at Eco Hotel. Governors, CEOs, foreign investors. He was asked not just to attend, but to host alongside a foundation focused on youth innovation. Chika grinned when he saw the invitation. Full circle moment. Tunde skimmed the guest list briefly, expression unreadable. He handed the tablet back. Confirm attendance. Across town, Zara's world was shrinking. Kunal's phone calls grew sharper, his temper shorter. The penthouse in Ikoyi was sold quietly to unlock liquidity. They moved into a smaller apartment under the explanation of strategic repositioning. Luxury dinners became rare. Designer purchases slowed. The champagne fizzed less often. One night, Zara found him staring at a laptop screen filled with red numbers. "Colonel," she asked softly. He shut the laptop quickly. "It's nothing." "It doesn't look like nothing." He stood abruptly. "Business has cycles. You think billionaires don't adjust?" She flinched at his tone. "I didn't say that." He exhaled, rubbing his face. Deals fell through. Investors pulled back. "It's temporary." Temporary stretched into months. Then came the invitation. A glossy envelope delivered to their door. Zara opened it absent-mindedly at first, then froze when she read the name printed boldly across the card. Host, Tunde Adebayo. Her fingers tightened around the paper. Colonel noticed her silence. "What is it?" "Charity gala," she said, forcing steadiness. "At Eco Hotel." He leaned over her shoulder. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Tunde Adebayo. That tech guy?" "Yes." Colonel gave a short laugh. "Everybody is a tech guy now." But his eyes lingered on the name longer than necessary. The night of the gala arrived heavy with anticipation. Eco Hotel shimmered under floodlights. Black cars lined the entrance. Cameras flashed. The air carried perfume and ambition. Zara adjusted the borrowed designer dress she had convinced herself no one would recognize. The fabric fit perfectly, but she felt strangely exposed. Colonel stepped out of the car beside her, confidence restored like a well-practiced performance. Inside, the ballroom glowed gold and white. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished floors. Conversations floated in controlled tones of power and influence. And then he walked in. Tunde. No dramatic entrance. No exaggerated swagger. Just calm authority. A tailored black tuxedo sat flawlessly on his broad shoulders. His posture was relaxed, assured. He moved through the room greeting governors, CEOs, foreign investors by name. He wasn't chasing attention. Attention followed him. Zara's breath caught despite herself. Colonel leaned slightly toward her. "That's him." "Yes." "He looks different." He did. Not just wealth. Presence. Tunde laughed lightly at something a governor said, then accepted a handshake from an international investor. Cameras flashed around him. Assistants hovered discreetly at a distance. For a brief second, his eyes swept the room. They met hers. Time slowed. Recognition flickered, but only briefly. His expression didn't harden. It didn't soften. It simply acknowledged. Then he looked away. He turned his body slightly and continued walking, stopping to greet another group as if she had never existed. Zara felt the impact like a physical shove. Colonel cleared his throat. "Let's find our table." She nodded mechanically. Throughout the evening, Tunde spoke about youth empowerment, sustainable infrastructure, building ecosystems instead of empires. His voice carried calm conviction. At some point, he said into the microphone, "You realize success is not noise. It's consistency." Applause filled the room. Zara barely heard it. Her mind replayed that brief eye contact. No anger. No bitterness. No longing. Just indifference. After the main program ended, guests filtered toward the lounge areas for networking. Zara excused herself, needing air. She stepped into a quieter corridor near the private suites. The muffled hum of conversation faded behind her. And there he was. Standing near a window overlooking the dark ocean, phone in hand, speaking softly to someone. "Yes, confirm the Nairobi meeting." "Push the London call by an hour," he said calmly. "Thank you." He ended the call. For a second, she considered turning back. Instead, she walked forward. Tunde. He turned slowly. Up close, the transformation was even clearer. Not just wealth. Maturity. Discipline. A stillness she had never seen before. "Good evening, Zara," he said politely. Her throat tightened. "You look, well." "I am." The simplicity unsettled her. "I saw the headlines," she continued. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Silence stretched between them. She searched his face for something, resentment, maybe. But there was none. "I didn't expect to see you here," she admitted. "I'm hosting," he replied gently. "Yes. I know." Another pause. "I'm happy for you," she said, and this time it sounded less rehearsed. "I appreciate that." She swallowed. "I've thought about reaching out." "For what?" he asked, not harshly. "Just curious." The question caught her off guard. She didn't have a clean answer. "To reconnect," she said finally. He studied her for a long moment. Not judging. Not analyzing. Just observing. "Life moves forward," he said calmly. "For both of us." His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it briefly but didn't answer. "I was young," she said suddenly. "I didn't understand." "You understood exactly what you wanted," he replied evenly. The words weren't cruel. They were factual. Behind her, laughter echoed from the ballroom. The world continued spinning, indifferent to her internal collapse. Kunal appeared at the end of the corridor, watching them from a distance. Tunde noticed but didn't react. "I should get back," he said. "Enjoy the evening." And just like that, he stepped past her. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just done. Zara stood there, staring at the ocean through the glass. The reflection staring back at her looked composed, but her chest felt hollow. Back inside the ballroom, Tunde was already engaged in another conversation, smiling lightly, fully present. To everyone else, it was just another successful event. To Zara, it was the moment she understood something irreversible. He had truly moved on. And she no longer knew how to reach him. The music in the ballroom softened into background elegance as the night deepened. Conversations grew more strategic, more intimate. Deals were being hinted at in low tones. Promises floated between handshakes. Zara returned to her table beside Kunal, but her body was present while her mind replayed every word Tunde had said. For what? The question echoed louder than it should have. Kunal leaned closer. What did he want? He didn't want anything, she replied quietly. Kunal scoffed. These tech boys like to act humble after they cash out. Zara didn't respond. Something about Tunde's composure felt different from performance. It felt settled. An hour later, Kunal received a call and excused himself, irritation flickering across his face as he walked away to answer it. Zara remained seated, pretending to scroll through her phone while glancing occasionally across the room. Tunde stood near the head table now, speaking with 2 foreign investors and a state commissioner. His posture was relaxed, his gestures measured. He wasn't dominating the conversation. He was guiding it. A staff member approached Zara. The private lounge upstairs is open if you need a quieter space." She hesitated, then nodded. The private lounge was dimmer, lined with soft leather chairs and subtle lighting. The noise from the ballroom barely reached there. She exhaled, finally allowing her shoulders to drop. Footsteps sounded behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Tunde. He paused a few feet away. Zara. Neither of them moved for a moment. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy with everything unsaid. "I didn't expect this," she admitted. "Success?" he asked mildly. "This. Seeing you like this." He slid his hands into his pockets, posture calm. "Growth looks dramatic from the outside. It's less glamorous in real time." She let out a faint laugh. I remember telling you ambition doesn't pay bills. You did. The memory hung between them. I was scared, she said suddenly. I didn't grow up watching struggle turn into success. I watched struggle stay struggle. Tunde studied her face. So you chose certainty? I thought I did. He nodded once. There's nothing wrong with wanting stability. Her eyes searched his. You're not angry. He considered the question carefully. I was hurt. But anger requires energy. I redirected mine. She blinked back unexpected tears. I didn't mean to belittle you. But you did, he said gently. The honesty didn't carry accusation. It carried clarity. I thought pushing you would make you rise faster, she whispered. I didn't need pushing, he replied. I needed peace. That word landed deeper than anything else. She sat down slowly, her composure cracking. When I saw your name on that invitation, I felt something I didn't expect. What was that? Regret. The confession filled the room. He didn't rush to respond. You made the right decision for the version of you that existed then, he said finally. And I made the right decision afterward. What decision? To build without needing validation. Tears slipped down her cheeks despite her effort to hold them back. I underestimated you. Yes. Again, no cruelty. Just truth. She wiped her face, embarrassed. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I stayed? Sometimes, he admitted. And every time I do, I realize I might not have worked as hard. The word stung more than rejection would have. You're thanking me, she asked weakly. In a way. She shook her head, half laughing, half crying. That's not fair. Life isn't, he replied calmly. Footsteps approached the lounge entrance. A woman stepped inside, tall, poised, elegant. Her presence carried quiet authority. She wore a deep emerald dress that complemented her confident stride. Tunde, she said warmly. His expression softened immediately, a shift Zara noticed with painful clarity. Amora, he replied. The woman smiled at Zara politely. Good evening. Good evening, Zara managed. Amora slipped her hand naturally into Tunde's. The gesture wasn't possessive. It was familiar. Ready to go? Amora asked him gently. Almost, he said. He turned back to Zara. I hope you find what you're looking for. The sentence felt like closure. Zara swallowed. And you? I already did. Amora's fingers tightened slightly around his hand, and he glanced at her with a look Zara had never received, not even in their best days. It wasn't infatuation. It was respect. They began walking toward the exit of the lounge. Tunde, Zara called softly. He paused. I'm sorry. He held her gaze for a brief second. I know. And then he left. The sound of their footsteps faded down the corridor. Zara sat alone in the dim lounge, the weight of realization settling fully now. She hadn't just lost a boyfriend years ago. She had lost the chance to grow alongside someone who was becoming extraordinary. Kunal entered moments later, irritation still clinging to him. There you are. We're leaving. She stood slowly, composing herself. Okay. As they walked back through the ballroom, she caught one last glimpse of Tunde and Amora near the exit, speaking briefly with the governor before stepping outside together. They looked aligned. Grounded. Untouchable. In the car ride home, Kunal scrolled through his phone in silence. Zara stared out the window at the Lagos skyline glowing in the distance. She remembered the night in the rain. The nylon bag of suya. The handwritten note dissolving on wet pavement. You're not my level. Now she understood something that cut deeper than pride. Levels change. But character reveals who rises. Back in his car, Heading toward Banana Island, Amora leaned her head lightly against Tunde's shoulder. "You handled that well," she said softly. He exhaled slowly. "There's nothing left to handle." She studied him. "You're sure?" "Yes." Outside, Lagos shimmered under the night sky. Inside the car, there was no tension. No unfinished business. Just forward motion. And for the first time since that rainy night years ago, the past felt exactly where it belonged. Behind him. Months passed, but that night at Eco Hotel refused to fade from Zara's memory. Life resumed its routine rhythm, yet something subtle had shifted inside her. Kunal continued moving through meetings, calls, and strategic discussions, but the energy in their relationship felt thinner, stretched over quiet disappointments neither of them fully addressed. One evening, as they sat across from each other at a modest dinner table in their downsized apartment, Kunal cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he began. Zara looked up from her plate. About us. About stabilizing things." She nodded cautiously. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table. Her heartbeat quickened, not from excitement, but from confusion. "Zara," he said, forcing a confident smile, "marry me." For a brief second, the world went silent. She stared at the box, then at him. "Now." "It's the right move," he insisted. "We've built something. We shouldn't let temporary setbacks shake us." Temporary. The word echoed strangely. She opened the box slowly. The ring sparkled, but the brilliance felt muted in her eyes. She imagined another balcony. Another man standing tall against the Lagos skyline, peaceful without needing to prove anything. "Say something," Kunal urged. She forced a small smile. "It's beautiful." "That's not an answer." She swallowed. "Yes." The word left her mouth, but it didn't land in her heart. Preparations began quickly. Small engagement gatherings. Carefully curated guest lists. Smiles for photographs. Yet in quiet moments, Zara found herself drifting back to that private lounge. "I already did." The certainty in Tunde's voice haunted her. One afternoon, alone in the apartment, she picked up her phone and opened his profile again. His company had expanded into 3 more African countries. A recent article showed him speaking at an innovation summit in Nairobi. Amora stood beside him in one of the photos, elegant and composed. Zara stared at the image longer than she intended. She typed a message. "Hi Tunde. I've been thinking about our conversation. I just wanted to say I truly am sorry for everything." Her thumb hovered. Then she pressed send. Minutes passed. No response. She placed the phone down, trying to ignore the anxiety rising in her chest. Hours passed. Still nothing. That night, she checked again. Delivered. But unread. Days later, unable to resist, she sent another message. "I know you don't owe me anything. I just wanted closure." This time, the message showed as read. Her heart pounded. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed. But it wasn't from him. It was a formal response. "Mr. Adebayo does not wish to continue this conversation. We wish you well." She stared at the words until they blurred. No insult. No bitterness. No emotional outburst. Just distance. A clean boundary. The finality hurt more than anger would have. Across the water in Banana Island, Tunde stood on the balcony of his home overlooking Lagos. The city lights stretched endlessly, flickering like restless ambition. The air was calm, carrying the distant hum of nightlife. Amora stepped beside him, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. "You've been quiet," she observed gently. He accepted the glass. "Just thinking." "About work." about how far things have come. She studied him carefully. And how important peace is. She smiled faintly. Peace is expensive. He nodded. I can afford it now. She leaned against the railing. Any regrets? He considered the question honestly. Regret is heavy, he said. I prefer lessons. She tilted her head slightly. And what was the lesson? Build in silence. Choose alignment. Don't chase people who can't see your vision. Amora slipped her hand into his. I see it. I know. His phone buzzed softly in his pocket. He glanced at the notification preview without opening it. Zara Adeyemi. He exhaled slowly, then locked the screen. Amora noticed but didn't ask. She trusted what he had already shown through action. In another part of the city, Zara sat alone on her bed, engagement ring catching the light from her bedside lamp. Kunal was out again, handling something urgent. She replayed the message in her mind. Mr. Adebayo does not wish to continue this conversation. Not Tunde. Mr. Adebayo. Formal. Distant. Untouchable. She realized something painful but undeniable. She no longer knew the man he had become. And he no longer needed anything she offered. Weeks later, during a quiet engagement dinner with friends, someone casually mentioned Tunde's latest acquisition deal. His company just acquired a European logistics firm, one guest said. Massive expansion. Kunal forced a smile. Over-leveraging can be dangerous. But Zara saw the flicker in his eyes. The insecurity. Later that night, alone again, she removed the ring and placed it on the dresser. She remembered the rainy night vividly now. The nylon bag of suya. The handwritten letter dissolving into wet pavement. The quiet dignity in his final words. One day, you'll regret underestimating me. She hadn't just underestimated his ambition. She had underestimated his resilience. And his capacity to outgrow pain without carrying it. On his balcony, Tunde watched a yacht glide slowly across the dark water. Lagos was alive below him, restless, loud, ambitious. He felt none of that noise inside. His journey had not been about proving Zara wrong. It had been about proving himself right. Amora squeezed his hand lightly. Ready to go inside. In a minute. He took one last look at the skyline, the same city where he once stood drenched in rain, holding cheap suya and shattered hope. Now he stood elevated, not just in wealth, but in clarity. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's becoming untouchable. And as the night breeze moved gently across the balcony, Tunde Adebayo felt something far more powerful than triumph. He felt free.